example of what would be in the best interest.
All right, I'll give you an example. This will be attached with a virtual one that a lot of people in this room will find maybe they don't dislike it, but and I dislike it to some extent myself, but I also see it the other side. You got a big donor, let's say Joe Jamel, millions of dollars given to the university. Okay. The president overrules the academic committee on Joe Jamel's son. I'm just making this up. This is just not just making this up. To let the son in. The son wasn't quite qualified, but the son could bring a lot to the university.
Yeah. So I don't mean to interrupt you, but I know where you're going with this.
A legacy kind of.
Yeah, I know where you're going with this. Well, first of all, it's illegal for the school to consider legacies under state law. Number one. Number two is, if you're gonna do, that's pay for play, pay to play. If we're gonna accept a certain amount of money to offer a spot, then why do we think Joe Jamel is going to pay the highest dollar for that spot? If we're going to auction them off, let's auction them off. Let's see how much money we can get. But it's still picking favorites, and it's still a special deal. And what I'm saying is, if we want to sell spots, then let's be public about it. We're going to sell 50 spots, but let's be public. We're a public institution. I mean, if you follow that, I mean, he and I both need a new kidney. We got UT health institutions. Who gets the kidney? The guy with the money? So I mean, where do you stop?
You do. Well, he's an Aggie.
That's
right.
I think where you stop is the question is, does the president have the wisdom and the judgment and the authority to be able to make some exceptions that he feels are appropriate and that can be reviewed by someone like the Regents, people like yourself?
So it's a great question. The Chancellor, we've changed the rules on admissions since all this happened, and it's improved, but it's still faulty because the Chancellor and the board voted on this, and this is the new policy. They allowed that very thing to happen, that the president can, under rare circumstances, admit a student in the best interest of the university, and he or she, whoever the president is, reports to the Chancellor. But the board is precluded from knowing who it was and why they were admitted. Okay?
Where's the transparency?
There is no transparency. It's wrong. And I voted no. I was the only one that voted no on the board. But it's wrong. And, we're a public institution, and I don't believe we should be auctioning off spots, because what happens is that then you use Joe Jamel. Then Joe Jamel, I mean, who does the president work for? This was an issue with President Powers. It's called a conflict of commitment. Who did President Powers think he worked for in his final few years? It wasn't the board. He answered to those people that gave the money, okay, that were there and that he gave spots to. That's who he answered to, and that was a real problem. That's who flew him around. You pick Joe Jamel, he was a great one. Joe Jamel flew him around to Cabo San Lucas, to St. Martin's, to Baker's Bay in the Abacus Islands, flew him to Normandy on his private plane, took him to Portugal, took him to Lisbon. I mean, is that really UT business? I mean, of course not. Of course not. Bill Powers said it was UT business. I don't see how it possibly could have been.
Well, let me ask this. I won't get to
One more question from you.
Yeah, I don't think we can get to the bottom of it.
Well, I already got to the bottom of it.
Well, let me ask you this. This is the challenging question. Why weren't you, the board is in a position to be able to see these things, these dirty type of things that you're bringing up. Why weren't you able to get other support on the Regents board to go along? I mean, are you saying they're all kind of corrupt?
No, there were some on the board. Remember, the board rolls over every couple of years. Three go on, three come off. And some of the board were afraid. I talked to them. They were afraid of being, that the politicians would come after them and try to bankrupt them because they didn't have the means to defend themselves. Some were worried about getting drug in with the grand jury. Others had, there were a number of board members. Oh, listen. It was very difficult to avoid touching the admissions process one way or the other. People would ask you to be involved. Some people did get involved. Nobody wanted this to be public. I told the board when I argued for an investigation, I said, listen, you know, to the extent anybody's done anything in admissions, you know, it doesn't mean that we don't do our job. Let's fix it. If we have to break it down before we fix it, we have to do it. And you know, some on the board didn't want that. And so, and you can't imagine the pressure coming from the politicians. 18 senators signed a letter trying to get us to remove our investigation of the law school to the Attorney General at the time. I mean, they threatened us with everything from taking away the permanent university fund to not allowing members to recover their expenses, you know, for travel, people that couldn't afford to pay for their own travel and hotel, frankly. And, you know, so all the pressure was put on us not to do it. And, you know, frankly, the majority of the board faltered when they shouldn't have. Yes,
I
sir.
have a question I might ask. Do you suspect why they're trying to keep this quiet is not just because of UT, but this is just a tip of the iceberg, because this could be nationwide? I mean, I'm a graduate from Purdue University.
So all of the super competitive universities have this problem. If you're a private institution, you can do the pay to play all you want. It's private. I mean, and they do. I mean, they you know, Stanford, one of the greatest universities in the country, private. They very much value legacies, okay? And they have benefited mightily from that because their legacies have turned out, you know, Silicon Valley, and they profited greatly from it. School has enormous wealth. The public universities that are competitive, they all have this problem. They all deal with it the best they can. The popular way now is that they're going to do a holistic review. I mean, they look at a variety of attributes from an applicant. Our problem is we operated under the holistic review for those 1,500 students each year, right? But we've been sued too. We're at the Supreme Court for the second time. And it doesn't appear, when you read the Crow report, that we've necessarily followed all the rules. And so we'll see what happens with the Supreme Court. But it is a problem, and part of it is that these universities don't want to expand. They don't want to compete. They don't want to expand their student body. You know, they want prestige. Prestige means fewer students, more teachers, more endowment, fewer students. You know, better students, more diverse students. That's how you move up in the rankings. And you know, I think a state school, we should be teaching as many students as we possibly can at every level. And because that's the way we become great.
Who said, ruled that your lawyer fees were going to be refunded to you? Who was the entity? And what does that say about the whole situation that your attorney fees were refunded to you?
Well, my attorney's fees haven't been refunded. We actually, I'm 7 figures into my attorney's fees at this point. And that includes their attempts to impeach me, the attempts to indict me, processing all my open records requests from the system and from the legislature, from Zapparini and the others. You know, spent a lot of money on that, a whole lot of money. There was no offer to reimburse those funds. When I sued the chancellor in my official capacity, the Attorney General is the one that said that UT system is responsible for paying the legal fees because I'm suing on behalf of the system. And he's defending himself on behalf of the system. You know, it's a interest system quandary. And but UT Austin, or the UT system, has not reimbursed my funds at this point.
But the Attorney General ruled that
They should, but doesn't mean that they will.
Okay.
You touched on this a little bit.